So the GH7 is here, and by here I mean I got one because I can't be stopped. I'm irresponsible with my money, and I went out and bought this thing on my own, just like the G9 II recently. And so I just wanted to talk about some of the things I noticed about this camera right off the bat. So whether it was good, not so good, and anywhere in between, here are some of the first things I noticed about the new GH7. One of my favorite, but also most confusing and most difficult to use features of the GH6 was the dynamic range boost. And the first thing you're gonna notice about this camera is that it seems to be gone, but it's not. It's been fully integrated into the camera. It's now automatic. Now this is not 100% a benefit necessarily, because before the minimum was 2000, you could turn it off and go down to 250, which was nice. Now it's at 500 to start, and it can go up all the way, but you can't go under 500 unless you turn on the low sort of dynamic range option, or you go over 60 frames a second to like 100 or 120 frames per second or something like that. But having there be not a toggle on and off, and being able to freely go through your ISO ranges in standard modes, photo modes, vlog, anything like that, has been really, really great. And I have to say, turning on the camera, I mean, they have that deep sleep mode, so if it's been asleep for a long time, it'll still take a while to turn on.
But I really wanted to look at the GH6 and the GH7, and yeah, the startup time's pretty much identical. It felt faster, but yeah, it's not. It's exactly the same pretty much.
But I have to say, there is still a bit of a record delay for me in most modes.
For whatever reason, sometimes it felt about the same and sometimes it felt a lot faster. But the reality is when you first hit record, the GH6 actually has less of a delay, but the GH7 on subsequent recordings, especially in fast succession, is going to be faster on the second, third, fourth, whatever record. So yeah, kind of interesting result here. I wasn't expecting that, but it totally explains the inconsistent feeling where sometimes I felt like it was faster and sometimes I felt like it was slower.
Another amazing improvement is they have just fixed HDMI in general. The delay is better. You can still turn audio off to make it even better still. And the info display, whether it is your screen or your monitor or both, there isn't that bug now where you would have to pick one or the other. You can now have a clean display in your monitor, or you can display the info and it'll still appear on your camera screen, which was a really annoying bug that kind of, I think, was introduced with the GH6 or the GH5 Mark II and persisted across all cameras and still persists across all cameras except for the GH7. And I have to say, there's a ton of small features that you've heard me complain about over and over before that I just started or just began appreciating, that were taken out of the GH6, even though they were in cheap cameras like the G100, or ended up in the full frame cameras, or ended up in the G9 II. Stuff like, I mean, let's just go through it. We've got like live cropping, where you could be just slowly cropping into your video in camera, so you didn't have to zoom or do it in post, especially if you're sending it off to an editor and they might not, you know, do the same thing you would have done. Live view composite, which is a super fun, like pseudo long exposure tool that is, again, in stuff like the GH5 Mark II, the G100, the S5, the S5, everything's got it but the GH6, and the GH7, thankfully, has that feature back, which is really fun. And again, Panasonic, I think, is some of the only cameras that have it, so it being missing from the GH6 really sucked, and I really appreciate it's back. I also, as someone who shoots weddings and, like I said, sends it off to an editor, I really like the eye dynamic feature. So if they're not going to do much or any color grading or color correction, eye dynamic is not the best thing ever, but if you just want to raise those shadows a little bit in really challenging situations, so you don't have as blown out of a background or as crust of shadows, you know, you got to watch out for the noise, but eye dynamic is actually kind of a handy feature that I'd love to talk about more in a future video, but I'm glad to see it back, as well as a bunch of other tiny little things and a bunch of things I'm probably missing. And on top of that, I don't think there's really anything that was removed from this camera from the GH6 or from the G9 II. It really does seem like they put everything that made those cameras great into this camera as well, which again was one of my little issues I had with the GH6, as much as I loved what it did. So having them not repeat that sort of style of things and leaving out stuff that they thought we wouldn't use and just giving us all the tools possible, I really appreciate. So not only did they put a lot of stuff back, but as far as I've noticed, there's nothing really major missing from those other cameras. And in fact, let's go to the next one, which is they've put in a bunch of new features that aren't on the G9 II. I don't know if they're even in the full frame cameras, but you know, there's like a live cropping, you know, kind of version of whatever Sony does, where you can super slowly crop in and out of your footage before recording, while recording, so you're not just stuck with full frame pixel to pixel. You've got everything in between, and that's really nice, and it's so neat. And there's a bunch of little things in there like that. What, you know, the real-time LUTs, the new app. There's just, I really appreciate that a lot of these little new updates are in the camera that I haven't even heard people talk about, and I can't wait to explore those just a little bit more. I want to talk about the streaking issue. Now, it still is here, and I did notice it shooting like vlog at like 12,800, the most backlight situation you've ever seen in your life, but it is so much more reduced than in the GH6, and even then I didn't think it was a real problem. But for the people that it was a problem for, and I'm not saying it's not a problem for some people, it just wasn't a problem for me, but for the people it was a problem for, it is so much more improved with the GH7. And in fact, Geeky Nerdy Techie tested this out and found out that a lot of these cameras are, most cameras will streak if you push them, and the GH7 is no different, not really any better or any worse than some of the main competitors out there. So yay. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because everybody says the autofocus is good, but it is really that good. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but I'm just gonna move on. It's good. Another thing I noticed right away is that the color science is once again different. Panasonic does this with basically every generation, or even every camera to some degree, and I just don't love the colors as much as the Vlog straight out of the GH6. Some of the other color profiles, like natural, maybe look about the same or a little bit better, but the point is, some profiles have really changed, some have really stayed the same, and figuring that all out and editing all my profiles to look the same again has been a bit of a chore, but you know, it kind of just is what it is. I really also think that the cameras do have a really nice sharp look to them, but the edge of that is like that digital look. So it's a fine line between sharpness and detail and digital sharpness and good noise performance and too much noise reduction. And especially in some of the other profiles besides the Vlog, it can be a little aggressive compared to the older cameras, which gave you a little bit more of a natural organic image. The Vlog also suffers from this, but not to the same degree. And if you ever shoot RAW, which of course it can do internally, or Blackmagic RAW or something like that, you can get around some of that stuff, but that's a lot of extra work. So I wish they could tone that down just a bit, but I feel like I'm also kind of getting used to it, and I'm seeing it less and less as time goes on. And it's not a huge deal for me, but yeah, again, I still kind of do prefer the GH6 image quality overall, but the GH7 is a much better camera just in terms of the full package, in my opinion. We might have to do some comparisons though later, so definitely let me know in the comments if you'd want me to do some, I don't know, GH6, GH7, GH5S, S5 II, whatever cameras I've got, I'll compare them, just let me know. And again, after using the G9 II for a few months now, and probably selling it unfortunately now, it's really nice to return to what I consider pretty much the best handling and feeling body design that Panasonic has done. It is smaller than the S1H, so I like that a little bit better, a little bit more lightweight. The tilty flippy screen, the fan, the tally lights, the record button on the front, how the dials feel, like it just everything about this camera is nice. Well, not everything. We still got the jangly bits, we still got the weird battery door, but besides that, I love it. I even love the CF Express cards. You know, even the things people don't love, you know, like, hey, I'm bumping the back dial for the camera control. I never really did that. Oh, I hit the front record button by accident. Doesn't really happen to me. So even half the negatives about this body design, I still enjoy. So I feel really comfortable to come back to the GH6, GH7 body design. And I really do appreciate that. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, guys. Do you think the GH7 was enough to warrant a full generation of cameras, or should this have been more like a GH6 Mark II? I'd be really curious to see what you guys think. But I have been enjoying the camera quite a bit. If you skip the G9 II, you're smarter than me, and this camera might be great for you. Even if you don't care about autofocus, I think just the piling up features of this camera are really, really excellent, and I've been super happy so far. But I will definitely let you know how it performs in a more long-term setting. I'm probably going to do a long-term review on the GH6 as well, so that's, you know, very on time as usual. And yeah, thanks for stopping by, listen to me rant about this stuff. And if you like this video, you know what to do. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and if you're down there and you're feeling it, go ahead and subscribe. If you do subscribe, I'll see you in the next one. Why'd I wink? I winked? I don't do... Cut. Oh.